What's up, everybody? This is Jimmy Rex, host of The Jimmy Rex Show. This is my podcast where I interview exceptional leaders living extraordinary lives, and just finished up a big episode with Doug Cartwright. And Doug is a longtime friend of mine, but he has been working on something so awesome. I've been waiting to get this episode forever. He has an app that has just come out called Shift that's going to be changing people's lives. And not only did I want to use the app and be able to share it with my friends, but I also invested in the app because I believe in the concept. I believe in the mission to help share gratitude and to help people with these daily shifts they're going to make in their lives to really stay on course to live their best lives. So super excited. That was such a fun interview for me, and I mean everybody that listens to this I know is going to get a ton out of it. Doug, dude, it's a pleasure, man. It's fun. It's funny because about 3 years ago, I started thinking about wanting to do a podcast, and you actually had just started one.
Right.
And you had me on as one of your first guests. That was the first time I ever sat down and was a guest on a podcast.
Yeah, it's actually interesting. I remember starting that podcast and bringing you on, and then I remember talking to you. We were talking about door-to-door sales stuff, and I actually remember there was a point for you where like something clicked, and I remember thinking like, oh, because that podcast didn't go very well for me, and I shut it down. I was kind of like, wasn't my thing. I'm like, oh, this isn't what I'm supposed to do. But I remember it kind of gave you a little bit momentum, and then shortly after, like your podcast started, and I was like, oh, maybe.
Yeah, it was just a few months before I started. I'd been sitting on my idea for about a year and a half, and I knew I wanted to do a podcast. I just had so many amazing friends that were around all the time that I got to soak in their information, their knowledge, and I'm like, how could I help my family listen to this? How could I help my friends be exposed to these people I'm around? And I was like, I should just start interviewing them like on a podcast. Right. But I sat on it forever, and then honestly, it really helped me to see the potential to get off. I'm like, okay, somebody else is going to steal my idea of interviewing the top people in Utah if I don't get off the pot and start doing this. So I appreciate that.
Full circle. It's how the universe works,
Full circle, man. Well, we'll dive into the app. Shift is kind of the main reason I wanted to have you on. This is podcast highlighting exceptional people. And from the first time I met you, we'll back up a little bit. I met you probably about 10 years ago. And it was funny because in my career at that time in real estate, it was 2009, so it was 10 years ago, I was kind of stuck. Nobody had money. Nobody wanted to buy homes. And I sat down with my real estate coach, and he said, hey, identify who are the people in your life that actually have money. And I said, well, these Vivint sales guys are all just killing it still. They're making a ton of money. And we made a list. I got a list from Bo Gardner of the top 15 guys in the company, and you were one of them.
Wow.
And that's the first time I heard your name. That was the first time. And then I had an opportunity, I think, to go on a vacation or something.
Did we go to Lake Powell?
We probably either went to Lake Powell. You know what I think it was? Is me and Jeff Mendez went to, who was a guest on this podcast. Right. We went to a San Antonio Spurs game versus the Heat, the finals, and we ran into you there. And then from there, we kind of just developed a friendship. But
yeah, that's amazing. It's so interesting, like looking back, connecting the dots, because I remember that day is I was selling in Austin, and it was the NBA Finals. It was Heat Spurs, and I made a goal for myself, whereas if I had sold 4 accounts by 4 p.m., I'm going to the finals. And given I've never sold 4 accounts by 4 p.m. on a weekday ever. And so long story short, first guy I knock onto gets it for his house and his business. So I sell 2, then I go to the next door neighbor and she buys 2 as well. So it's just like crazy situation. I'm like, oh, I guess I have to go to the NBA Finals now.
Yeah, you drove a couple hours to get there.
Yeah, and I drove, it was a 2-hour drive, and I found a ticket, second row, buy the seat, and then end up you and Jeff happened to be there.
Well, your name had been on my list for some time, probably a couple of years at that point, and I hadn't got to know you. You were one of the few guys on there I hadn't been able to reach because you were always out selling. But talk about that a little bit. I mean, you were one of the top sales guys at Vivint, selling over 300 accounts a year, which, I mean, to give people an idea, if you're not from Utah, you might not understand as much, but like if people knew how much money these summer sales guys are making, several $100,000 in 4 or 5 month windows. And if you're in the top 10, top 15, most people don't leave, which is kind of an interesting part of your story. But walk us back through. I mean, you got home, you actually went on a mission for a little bit. You came home early from that too, right?
Yeah, so I did the Mormon mission thing, went out, quote unquote, on Mormon standards, unworthy.
You're worthy to me, Doug.
Yeah, thanks, Jimmy. I feel like I'm worthy now. But didn't really felt like it was that big of a deal. Got out there, felt guilty, brought it up to my mission president at the time, not thinking anything serious was going to happen. It wasn't like some crazy transgression sin, they talk about, and was blown away that he sent me home. So I was like, what?
How long had you been out for?
I was out for 9 months. I was in New Zealand, and I loved my mission. New Zealand's amazing, and I don't have a bad thing to say about it, but it was really weird because it was like, oh my gosh, I'm that guy that's getting sent home from their mission. And I remember being on the airplane coming home thinking, okay, this is going to be a new shift in my life, because literally, like, growing up, I was student body vice president. I was captain of the football team, I was at the standard, and now I'm the guy getting someone from my mission.
Yeah, and like in Utah terms, it's like there's, especially back then, I don't know if it's as bad now, but it was like you were a true like outcast dipshit if you got sent home from your mission.
So I was like the all-star.
That was the shame that came with that, unfortunately.
Yeah, I felt like I was like some high school all-star, and now I'm like, oh my gosh, now there's some shame coming. What am I going to do? So it was really interesting. I remember hearing about kids getting sent home from their mission and like how they'll lock themselves in their basement and they won't go out in public, and there's just so much shame and so much guilt. And I remember thinking, like, I don't want to be that person. And so the first Sunday back in my home ward was Fast Sunday. It was Fast and Testimony Meeting. And that just means it's an open mic basically on Sunday, and anyone can come up and talk and, bear their witness of the church or whatever. And so I immediately walk straight up to the pulpit and like owned my story.
I love that.
I'm like, I made some errors in judgment and I'm home now. So, and I just want you guys to hear it from me, not from someone else, but I am home because of a mistake.
Well, there's so much power in owning your own story, no matter what it is, right? Like, I know with me, there was a kid one time that I had to call out because he was just being abusive to women. I'll just say what it is. And he hated me because he had nothing on me. And he tried to say, well, I'm going to, like, tell people this and this. And I'm like, dude, go listen to my damn podcast. I talk about it all the time. Like, I have nothing to hide. So it kind of protects you when you live in a way that, like, you're just letting your story be known. It actually empowers you. And so I love that you took the ownership in that moment. And so was it hard? I mean, at that point, how'd you decide what to do next? It sounds like you had a good perspective from the time.
And so I was kind of like, okay, do I go back on my mission? Do I not? And then it's just like, something I really embrace now is I've put full trust in, whatever you want to call it, God, source, universe, soul. I put my full trust in that now. And looking back, it was so simple because I was home and I'm like, okay, what do I do? Do I go back on my mission? And at that, around the same time, thinking I was going to get back, my dad got diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. And so it was like, oh my gosh, what a gift, right? Going home from my mission early was, because now I got my dad's, his last good year I got, where I wouldn't have if I was on my mission. So it's one of those things where it's like, how does that play out, right? And
dude,
so
isn't that wild though? Like you said, it was like most people don't get sent home from their mission for what you did. And somebody the other day was talking about on one of my posts on Instagram, and I asked a question of somebody basically said, my life's gone to crap. Here's all the things going wrong. And one of them was, they lost their job. I said, what a gift. And he's like, I'm going to need some explanation, bro. Not really following you.
Yeah.
And I said, well, for whatever reason, that job was not supposed to be in your life anymore. It opening up your life to all the opportunities that are out there. He's like, wow, I just changed my perspective.
Yeah.
But in moments we don't think about, this might be a huge blessing for me.
Sure.
But the universe knows. The universe is working in our favor, God, like you said, whatever. And sometimes we don't want to acknowledge that, I think, but it's like, if you just kind of own whatever happens to us as part of whatever is supposed to be there, then these freaking gift, what a blessing to have that year with your dad, man.
It was I was so lucky. Some of my best memories with my dad, and it's just literally, it's the mentality. You change your lens from life doesn't happen to me, it happens for me. And when you can embrace that understanding, your entire life changes. Because when you do run into these trials of like, oh my gosh, my dad has cancer, right? And he's gonna die. And he did. He was diagnosed and he passed away within 14 months. And it was so easy to play victim role, but it's like, oh my gosh, what can I learn from this? And I really had to step up in my family, right? It's like, I have to be a man now. There's no more crutch, right? And just the fact that I am now empathetic towards others going through similar situations, because you never think it's going to happen to you. Like, oh, especially growing up, like, it's not going to be my dad that gets cancer and dies, or I'm not going to lose this person in my life. And then it happens to you and you're like, oh my gosh, like, what am I to learn from this? And so it's interesting because the death of my dad actually really catapulted me into my Vivint career, because then it was like I felt like I had something to prove, and I was like, I need something to really put my attention and my energy in, and just this opportunity at Vivint showed up, and I was able to really embrace this new role. And I was looking for new mentors because my dad was my top mentor. And then these other people come into my life, Jeff Mendez, Casey Bob, Odie Gardner, who gave me kind of a sense of purpose and direction. And then that really catapulted me into that area of my life. And they really helped show me this new kind of personal development side that's changed my whole life.
Well, and that was kind of the start of what eventually became where you started this app and everything else.
Yeah.
But so when you started out in Vivint, I mean, how old were you when you first went out for summer?
20. Yeah, I was
20 years old. And so you go out on these doors. Had you ever sold anything before? I mean,
I started doing door-to-door food storage here in Utah. And I was actually pretty good at it. And for whatever reason, and I'm grateful for my parents. They raising me, they really taught me how to communicate with adults. And so actually, like when I was in junior high.
How did they do that? That's a great skill that I think a lot of parents don't do very well. So what did your parents do for you?
I was just with my parents' friends a lot and was involved in the conversation. So instead of like
sending me away,
they would bring me in. And so we're talking about, I'm just kind of, I started off as kind of just eavesdropping the conversation my parents were having with their friends. And then I kind of just started getting involved a little bit more. And so I'm growing, like I remember being in 9th grade, and there were weekends where I would actually rather go hang out with my parents and their friends so I could have these conversations than like go out to hang out at the park and whatever and just kind of like BS with girls or whatever. And so I just grew up having more adult conversations. And so talking to adults was always really easy for me. So then when this opportunity comes to do door-to-door food storage, I just enjoy talking to people and meeting new people. And so I started to learn that sales skill. And so then when it came to Vivint, they have the structure there is insane, how well they train their reps, and was able to really narrow in.
So how many years did you do that for?
Vivint, I was at Vivint from 2011 until I sold an account last year, so 2018.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then again, we had Jeff Mendez on here. If you want to hear more about that whole thing, all the door-to-door guys that we've, and it's funny because in Utah, I'm trying to find exceptional people all the time to interview, and so many of them did have some kind of tie or do have some kind of tie to the door-to-door industry, whether it was Sam Taggart or Keith Nelson. There's so many of these different people we've had on the podcast. But so in your case, so you're killing it, dude. I mean, I'm just going to call it what it is because it's important to the story. You're making $500,000 a year going door to door. You are killing it. You're front row to every sporting event. I'm there with you to half of them. We went to the Final Four. We went to the front row at the very first college football playoff championship. Yeah. Ohio State beat Oregon.
That was a fun one.
I mean, you were doing whatever you wanted, traveling the world. I think I saw you at the Super Bowl sitting with Kevin Durant in a suite. Yep. And you're living this high life. But something's missing, and so what happened? I mean, how did you figure out? I mean, you had some kind of enlightenment or whatever, but talk us through how you went from that transition from Doug that was kind of the flashy driving a Rolls Royce, I think you were driving around town, to the guy that you are today.
Yeah, so my time at Vivint is probably the most valuable time of my entire life. I was living a lifestyle that I feel like any single early 20-year-old male would want to live. I mean, I had made, over the years, over $1 million at Vivint by the time I was 25. And so there's this idea out in the world today where it's success is out there, right? If you want to be successful, you have to go get it, whether that turns into the car, the trip, right? So I was going to all the sporting events. I was at NBA Finals, the Super Bowl, sitting next to Kevin Durant, right? I was driving the Mercedes. There was a point where I was dating runner-up Miss USA, right? Because that's what you want, right? And I knew internally that I wasn't fulfilled and that I was always searching for more, and actually turned into a really scary time in my life because I felt like I was doing well financially, and I was in my middle, late 20s, and the people, not necessarily within Vivint, but in my world, who were making more than me, didn't feel fulfilled either. So it's kind of like, where do I go from here? Because I don't think more money is the answer, because the people who are making more money feel like they're just as unsettled as I am.
When it's like there's this myth. If you've never had money, you think like once I have money,
Yeah.
once I have the success, things will be great, right?
Right.
But then you get there and you see everyone around you there, and you're like, oh, we're all missing something.
We're all
here.
missing something. Yeah. So it was like, okay, do I get the nicer car? Do I go on the more vacation? Do I get the nicer condo?
Which
right?
is sadly what a lot of people end up doing. Right.
Right. And so I'm really blessed that I was in such this trial. And then about 2 years ago, I had a very intense spiritual awakening. Right. And so beforehand, I was very not self-aware is the word I would use. And through unraveling this experience, it was a scary time in my life, but I decided, hey, I'm going to go down this journey. It's Joseph Campbell's hero's journey thing. Like, you're going to get the call, and are you going to go out and find yourself?
Dude, we've never talked about this, but it's kind of funny you mentioned that. I'm writing a book that comes out in like February, and it's all based on Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey.
Hero's Journey,
yeah,
yes.
the whole thing.
So
and I use guests from the podcast. I haven't even told anyone this yet.
Yeah.
I'm using all the stories of the guests from the podcast.
Cool.
And the universe just has ways of connecting things.
Yeah.
I just thought that was a cool moment.
Yeah. And so I got tapped on the shoulder by the universe. I didn't know where I stood on a religious or a spiritual level. I didn't know if there was a God at this point in my life. And I said, you know what, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it. So I took everything as truth. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go see the psychic. I'm going to get my zodiac thing. I'm going to go get my chakras aligned. I'm going to Burning Man. I'm going to go do ayahuasca retreats. And like, I did it all. Right. And it was really cool because it was like, oh my gosh, there is so much value here in this space, even though it's really weird. And a lot of it is too weird and woo, and I don't subscribe to it. But I went and explored that way. And I found this deep connection to source that really filled my soul at a level I've never felt it before. And it was cool because it's like, oh my gosh, I spent the last 8 years learning leadership and sales skills and communication and goal setting and work ethic. And then I combine this world with this spiritual world, and it's like, oh my gosh, like I feel like this is what I've been searching for, and I feel like this is what a lot of people are searching for too, but we just don't really know where to find it. And so about 2 years ago, I was doing my morning routine. I have a very rigorous morning routine of journaling and meditating and breathing, and there's all these like little journals out, the morning Miracle Morning and 5-minute journal and yada,
I've
yada,
got the
yada,
same
right?
like 4 different journals. I got like my journal that's just me rambling, and then I got like my 5 gratitude thing journal, and I've got I got the Brendan Burchard planner that's and it's like, which one do I use?
Yeah, so it's very similar, exact same situation.
Yeah.
And I was doing had done one journal, put next to the next journal, but I'm like, you know what, I'm going to create my own. Like, why can't we put all this in one? So the initial idea from Shift, which is now Shift, was I'm going to create my own journal. So I kind of like did a little rough draft. Okay, these are the kind of the things I want to hit on my journal: your gratitude practice, my to-do list, my meditation. And then a couple months later, I was asleep, and I literally like had one of those movie moments where I literally just lean up out of bed, and I just lean up and I'm like, it's an app. And I said it out loud, verbally by myself, probably 3 a.m. I'm like, it's an app. I need to build an app. So whatever, I got some divine inspiration through my dreams or whatever. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to build an app. But at this time in my life, it's like, I don't know anything about building apps. And I don't know how to code. I don't know anyone who builds apps. I don't even know where even to start. And so I took this idea that I feel like came from something bigger than me, and I meditated on it. And this is where my life really starts to change, because I harnessed this meditation practice. And what I've learned through my meditation practice is there is so much noise in our life, right? Work and relationships and family and social media and Instagram and sports. And what's interesting is a lot of the noise isn't bad. Like, being involved and interested in sports isn't bad.
But it's noisy.
But it's blocking out the
Yes,
noise.
yes.
Or it's blocking out the inspiration, right?
yeah.
And so I then really harnessed a meditation practice, right? And so the purpose of meditation in my life is to eliminate the noise so I can tap into source. And the cool thing is I don't care what you call it. Like I said, God, universe, soul, and on the lowest level, like gut feeling.
Yeah,
Like
sure.
anyone listening to this can resonate with one of those
Well,
words.
if nothing else, I mean, science proves there's energies that are always working around us,
Right.
right? Gravity's an energy, magnetism magnetism is an energy. Like these
Sure.
things are all at work all the time.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, there's always different energies and
Yeah.
things, like you said, sources.
Yeah. And so what's so amazing is in my meditation practice, like I've been reading these books and watching these YouTube videos on people's meditation. And the purpose of meditation, this is the biggest misconception, is purpose of meditation isn't to clear your mind. It's impossible. You can't clear your mind. Like there's always thinking of something. It's like, think of the pink elephant. You're going to think of a pink elephant, right? And so sitting in meditation and then allowing your thoughts to do what they need to do, right? And they come in and you don't judge them, right? So sometimes I sit down and I close my eyes and I'm like, okay, I'm meditating, and I have this weird memory from when I was a little kid playing in McDonald's Play Place. Totally fine. Let that thought come in, do what it needs to do, and then go. And then eventually your thoughts are going to start to settle almost into files, and it kind of just slows down. And then it allows you to get this direct access to source to receive this inspiration, right, of where you need to direct your life, Call it what you want, the still small voice, Holy Ghost, it doesn't matter. It's very real. And so I have this idea for this app, and so I'm meditating on it. And it's like, okay, is this what I'm supposed to do? And in my meditation, it was just like, oh my gosh, I need to build this. And as I meditated deeper and deeper on it, I realized this idea of this brand or this app, it's actually not my idea. It's something bigger than me. And I just knew that. And so it's like, okay, I'm going to figure out how to build an app. And it has been absolutely insane how, as I've surrendered to this idea, how the right people, the right time are showing up. And it's been, this is a year and a half in the making on this app. And today I now own an app development company because the right people have showed into my life, and we're launching here now.
So in that moment, I mean, you had the inspiration, you feel this is bigger than me. I have to do this.
Yeah.
But so many people just in the name of security, in the name of certainty, still wouldn't have taken that plunge.
Yeah.
So I guess for you, what was that allowed you to give up the financial security? Mm-hmm. When was that point where you're like, no, I can do this. I have to do this.
Yeah. So that's a really scary place to be. And I think a lot of people can resonate with this message of like, okay, I feel like I need to do this, but they're too scared to step into it, right? There's a lot of fear, and it's like, it's a really scary place to be. And the only way I can explain is I just knew I needed to do it. And I had built this relationship with source or the divine that I trusted. And I started small, right? Small little nudges, like go here at this point, or like reach out to this person. And I would see the magic unfold. And it's like, okay, I can trust this feeling. And so, yeah, like leaving my secure job at Vivint, it's still, to this day, one of the scariest things I've ever done. And it's still scary to this day. Like I'm terrified right now because I've invested everything. I'm in debt to this app. Like I'm leveraged. I've taken some of my best friends' money to build this app.
Including mine.
Including yours, right? And it's like, I have a lot of pressure to succeed on this thing. And I don't know, but what's really cool is I feel like I've surrendered shift to the universe. Mm. And I know that if I listen to my intuitive hits and follow the whispers or the nudges is what I call them, that I'm gonna get taken care of.
Well, and you guys just came out of beta phase. I think you had over 700 people using it just on that.
Yeah.
And so I guess one cool thing about the app, and something that probably, I don't know, as I heard kind of what you were doing, the shift that you were making and how you were going to be, what it was going to entail, I was like, well, Doug can't lose with this because his worst case scenario is he's literally studying all of these things that make you better every single day of your life, and you're building an app around it. Like there's no way you come out of this not better off in every aspect of life, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And so for me, it was kind of like, that's one of the reasons why I chose to invest with you in it, because I said, you know what, as a worst case scenario, this dude's gonna learn and grow so much from this. And now, I have no doubt it's going to work, and it's going to be a hugely successful app. And like I had Garrett G on the podcast, and he sold his app for over $50 million and stuff. So it's a real business, the viable thing. And so, but for me, the power of just somebody indulging themselves in that,
yeah,
you can't put a price on that. my nephew recently was just kind of in a rut, and I hired him. I'm paying him to read books and find me content to share to my audience.
Cool.
That's like positive. I'm giving him like Think and Grow Rich and Jim Rohn, all these books. And if my worst case scenario is who he's going to become by doing this is going to be worth every dollar I spend. But I'm going to get all the stuff I need out of it too. So there's kind of
the cool thing about the app. I mean, the cool thing about the app is that so many of us, I feel like, are looking for something more. Like, I want to feel this inner peace. I want to feel this fulfillment. I want to feel like I'm making a difference, right? And I'm not just kind of going through the emotions. The app is the landing place for you, right? It's very simple. None of the techniques are mine. Like, I didn't come up with these ideas, but the app really focuses on three main things just at the beginning. We focus on gratitude, we focus on breath, and we focus on meditation. And if you can just...
Why those three?
Yeah, so gratitude, very simple, right? We can just do an exercise right now together. If you just sit here, relax, close your eyes, and think of a moment, and the listeners join us, think of a moment where you felt truly grateful, an experience. Where were you? Who was there? What did you feel? Right? And really just embrace that moment. And just take a big, deep breath and just spread gratitude for that moment, right? And you open up your eyes, it's like you feel different right now.
Yeah.
Right? And so we encompass the first thing you do with the app is you're doing your gratitude every morning and you're doing it every night. Because I'm a big believer that your inner world dictates your outer world. Because if your inner world, if you're people act on the outside how they feel on the inside. So if you walk around the planet with a sense of gratitude and awe and love and amazement, those things are going to attract you and you're going to see that on your outer world. And so these are just very simple practices to get you into that state.
Well, I think it's important to remember that and if somebody's acting negatively towards you,
has nothing to do with you.
They're hurting on the inside, right? And you really quit taking things so personal, right? Like, this isn't about me. I don't need to make that person's life worse by reacting back to them. Yeah. There's so much, Tony talks about this all the time. Tony Robbins, he says gratitude and pain can't coexist at the same time. So if you can get yourself into a state of gratitude, you can't feel like pain in those moments. Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing too. And so then we go into the breath part too, where it's like naturally, as human beings, we don't breathe very deeply. We breathe very shallow, and it's like a sense of on guard, right? And so when you breathe, it's actually been proven that how 7 deep breaths literally changes your physiology, right? And so if you just push out with your stomach, a lot of us, we don't breathe with our stomach, we breathe with our chest. And so if we do these big, deep breath practices, this always returns to calm, and your breath brings you to the present moment, right? So there's so many times, like there's the noise, right? There's noises going on and I got to do work and spouse is calling me and we're on traffic and the music and it's just,
it's like
brings you to the present.
You see those bumper stickers, right? That just say, just breathe, right?
Just breathe.
I did a sweat lodge a couple of weeks ago in Havasupai Falls, and I started getting super anxious and stressed out. I mean, you're literally underground. There's 15 of you in a small room and it's 150 degrees. And I literally had this moment where it was like, just breathe, you're okay.
Yeah.
And I did. And it's funny that you said you have to be present, because if you're anxious, you're thinking too much about the future. If you're depressed, you're thinking too much about the past.
Yeah.
So if you can just breathe and be in the moment of today, you can be present, you can kind of get rid of that anxiety and that depression that kind of are always creeping up on us.
Yeah. Our especially in anxiety, our brains are triggered to be anxious because we're trying to solve future problems, right? Anxiety is like, oh my gosh, I'm worried about the future. And our brain is trying to solve a problem for the future, but we don't have enough information today to usually make that decision in the future. And so I always like to use the mantra of like, okay, come back to my breath. I have everything I need to have a beautiful day today. So I ask that to you, Jim. Do you have everything you need today to have an amazing, beautiful day?
100%.
Right? And that's true for all of us, right? But we're so caught up in the past or the present. But if we can just breathe and come from a sense of gratitude and practice a meditation practice, like it allows us to really experience and enjoy the present moment. Because I'm a big believer, like the planet we live on is actually a very magical planet. Like it doesn't make sense on a logical level what's going on right now. Like it makes no sense. Like we are on a rock orbiting a star, hurling through the infinite space, and we have the perfect living conditions here. Like, it's insane. It's literally insane. Like, if you think about it, there is a magnetic field around our planet that blocks deadly solar rays from killing us. And it just does that. Like, it's just there. It's there for us. And like, you put a seed in the ground, and that seed eats photons from the sun, and it grows, and then we can eat food that gives us energy. Like, if you really think about that, that's insane. So we live on a magical planet. We really do. But we were born into it, so we're very accustomed to it. And so my big thing is, like, we live on a magical planet, and it is literally just waiting for our senses to grow sharper so we can see the magic in everything. And then we can actually bring in that magical force into our life. And it's just this idea of manifestation and gratitude. Our whole outer world begins to change.
Wow, that was beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
No, the miracle of just being a human being alive is like, Gary Vee talks about this all the time, right? It's like the odds of you being, your organism would end up being like an actual person, like a functioning person that is aware of his own existence, is like 1 in 4 trillion.
Yeah.
It's like
400 trillion to 1.
Is that what it is? 400.
400 trillion to 1.
Yeah, it's insane. It's like,
it makes no sense.
No, it's beautiful. And so when you really put that in perspective, when things are going wrong or things aren't, people just, they let things consume them, and they have these days where they just totally forget any sense of gratitude or to just stop and really appreciate what is life and what's going on around us. Yeah. So the app, I mean, one of the things I really love about it when you were, first pitched me the idea was that it has daily, call it tasks you're
daily
supposed
shifts.
to do. Yeah.
The
And talk
shifts.
about those a little bit, because that was one of my favorite parts about the app.
Yeah. So Shift basically gives you a very foundation of activities to do every day just to bring you back to center, bring you back to presence, and bring you back to that space where you can really look at the world from a magical lens. And so when you first download the app, we could keep it really simple. Like I said, we focus on gratitude, we focus on breath, we focus on meditation. And as you show progress in those fields and your life begins to change, then we give you a little bit more. And then we focus on mind, body, and soul, right? So we have tasks. Are you eating well? How well are you sleeping? How is your hydration? I love one. We have one called staying curious, right? Because us as human beings, we're creators, right? That's why we're here. We are all
You're either
artists.
creating or consuming. I love that concept.
Yeah.
So go create, right?
Yeah. So what can you go create? Because I think everyone on this planet has a distinct role to be here, and we all have unique gifts. Like, one of my favorite quotes is, "Everyone you meet knows something you don't," right? So we all have amazing gifts that we're here to share it with the world. And so a lot of us just haven't tapped into our true gifts. I mean, I think about my hobbies today, like things I love, like I geek out on. I wasn't even involved with 3 or 4 years ago. Like, I had never skied. Like, I love space. I love science fiction novels just for fun. Like, I like cooking now. Like, these weren't hobbies of mine, but I've learned to look in and ask questions. Okay, like, what do I really love, And I've now learned these new talents and have opened up these new parts of me that I can now share with the world. And I think we all have that capability within us. We just don't know where to look. And so these daily shifts allow us to start thinking that way, allow us to start thinking a different way. And we have I have a daily growth challenge every day. So every day you're going to get either a soul purpose question or a comfort zone experiment, right? To really make us feel a little bit uncomfortable.
Give us an example of one of those.
Yeah. So for example, a comfort zone experiment would be to go up to a stranger and compliment them, right?
Which sounds so stupid and basic, but it really is so powerful, because most people go days and even weeks without doing that.
Yeah.
And so when you're consciously in your mind to do it,
Yeah.
you're just going to do that more often. And you get the reward of seeing what it does for that stranger. All of a sudden, you become the type of person that just wants to compliment strangers.
What's interesting, because it's like, oh my gosh, that seems scary. But think if a random person came up to you and looked you in the eye and was like, "Hey, sir, like, that's a really good looking shirt on you. Like, I love that."
Well,
how do you feel? You're like, "Oh my gosh, thank you." Like,
Dude, I remember a girl from 7th grade, and I didn't really even know her. She was just a girl in school, barely knew her, and she just looked at me one day and she goes, "You're going to be a very attractive adult. I can just tell." And it's, to this day, it's been 25 years. Yeah. That's one of the best, most important compliments of my life, because I remember it just gave me this confidence, like, oh, I'm going to be an attractive adult. It's the dumbest thing, but like, to this day, I honored that girl because for whatever reason, I needed it that day that she gave me that random compliment. I think that was all she said to me. Right. That was it.
Yeah. So we have a ton of those, and then we also have the soul purpose questions, and like we'll ask deep questions like, "What do you think your purpose is on this planet?" I mean, you ask that to the average person, they don't even. They're like,
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I did a 7-day Tony Robbins seminar to figure that question out. But most people have never put 10 minutes into actually thinking, what am I actually supposed to be doing here?
Yeah.
Right?
So it's really interesting. It's just like when you really try and get this cosmic perspective, like it's actually really, really weird and insane that we're living, you know? And so I think it's really important for us as human beings to discover that purpose for ourselves, because more likely than not, if you're listening to this, your stance on politics and culture and society and religion were actually decided by someone else, and you were kind of just born into that and kind of just accepted that worldview. And then our human nature is we want to look for those confirmation biases in the outside world. And so I think the best thing you can do as a human being
Question those.
is figure it out for yourself. I'm not going to tell you what's true and what's not true. That's not my job. I feel like my purpose on this planet is to help you discover it for yourself.
Well, what's true for you and true for somebody else is going to be different.
Totally different, yeah.
And they're going to matter different. They're going to value it differently. And so that really is what the app does, though. I was going to ask you, like, because they really are very well designed to get you thinking.
Right.
And most people don't stop, including myself, and just think sometimes about different things, right? And sometimes people don't even know what to think about.
Right.
Like you tell most people, you're like, dude, somebody getting or somebody getting married, I always like to ask them, I said, honest question, did you spend more time planning your guys' future together or planning your wedding?
Right.
And they're almost always like, the wedding.
So it's interesting too, as you spend time, and this is a lifelong process. Like I already 100%. Know internally, like my purpose is going to change and it's going to continue to evolve. But there's this confidence and empowerment that comes to when you yourself have discovered why you're here and what your purpose is, and that you figured it out for yourself. It gives you this confidence to step out into the world and truly live your life your way, because it eliminates a lot of the fear, because you're living for you. Like, I know my mission, I know my purpose. I'm a lot more unstoppable to accomplish my goals than someone who's like, I'm not sure what to believe or why I'm here, what's going on, I'm just being told what to do.
Well, for you, failure went from, if this doesn't work, I'm a failure, to, if I don't try this, I'm a failure.
Right.
Because it doesn't matter what the outcome is.
Yeah.
It's your own expectation of yourself. You don't need it to be anything for anybody else.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, you've taken away the pain that comes from failure. And the only failure is to just not honor your heart and go and do what you're trying to do.
Exactly right. And it's just, we're so scared of what people are going to think, because I think at the core of us as human beings, especially in society today, is we're all seeking validation. Right? Validate me, tell me I'm enough, tell me my car, tell me my spouse is pretty, tell me my job's great, tell me I make enough money, validate me, validate me, validate me, right? And what's interesting is, through my work and study, is that absence of validation comes from our childhood. So we all have trauma, for sure, every single one of us, right? And if you don't think you have trauma, guess what?
You do.
You have a lot of trauma, right? And so between the ages of 6 and 16, something happened. Right, there's a story we tell ourselves. Like mine, I was the fat kid, right? So that turns in like, okay, I'm something's wrong with my physical appearance, and I know that, and you know that. So I need to go seek validation that I'm enough, because I'm internally the story I'm telling myself is I am not enough, right? And if you can actually go back yourself and do the healing work, and healing work it's hard. Like you are reliving painful memories and whatnot, and you can go back and heal and validate that yourself. If I have true belief that I am enough and I don't need exterior validation, we all love it. I still love exterior validation.
Of course, yeah.
But if I don't need it and I'm not seeking it, it gives me the freedom to go out into the world and really just do whatever I want, because I don't need your validation. I get it from within.
Well,
it's just a new level of freedom.
The crazy part is you see people that don't need that validation, that truly don't need it. And you're just like, wow, they're just living at such a great level. And then you see people that really need the validation, and it's so ugly. People who see the things they're doing and the things they're saying and the things they're posting. You're just like, your need for this. We all do it, right? Like I'm guilty of it. When I'm in a needy state, I can know. I'm trying to snap myself out of those, because I can tell when I'm doing things to be validated from within versus without, or outside of myself.
Right, and it's when you and my years at Vivint, that's all it was. Is I was seeking exterior validation. Right. That's why I went and got the car. That's why I was dating run up to Miss USA. That's why I'm posting pictures with Kevin Durant. It's because I need you to validate me, because I know internally my subconscious believes I'm not enough because I'm the fat kid. Right. And so when you are living a life of exterior validation, you're not living your life for you. You're living it for other people. And it's obvious that if you live your life for other people, you're not going to be happy. And so that's why I created Shift. Because Shift will give you the tools to look within, to heal old trauma, to maybe give you some ideas of how the world works and allow you to go on that journey and find yourself, right? And give you that confidence that now you can show up at the world in a different way. Which is extremely fulfilling.
I think it's awesome, and I've been wanting to have you on here for a while. I've been waiting for this app to come out, and honestly, for me, this wasn't a financial decision to support you on this. It was if this is going to change the world and do for other people what all this coaching and journaling and gratitude has done for me, then I want it to be out there. I want this to succeed. So for those of you that are listening to this right now, download the app. It's a for pay sell, you're selling it, right? So how does it work?
There's a free version, and download the free version. The free version, you're going to get gratitude.
I'm going to go a step further. Buy the damn thing because it's going to be worth it. It's like $8, isn't it?
Yeah, $8 a month, right?
Yeah.
And there's discounts if you buy for a year or whatnot. But on the free version, you're going to get the 3 most important things, I believe, which are gratitude, breath, and meditation, right? And like I said, I don't believe Shift is mine. I'm the vessel. The universe is using me to spread this, and I'm very grateful that I get to play that role. But it's like, how many people can get this in their hands? I know from my experience, like you're going to live a more fulfilled, purposeful life for sure.
Yeah. Well, anything like that can help people produce better and be more productive and truly productive, I'm all about it. So, dude, I appreciate you, man. I think it's going to be fun to watch how this affects people. And what's going to be cool is once the stories start coming in of how it's changing people's lives and how I love the name Shift too, because if you talk about like an airplane that has to get to a destination, it's making these tiny little shifts along so that they can get to their destination. It's kind of like what we do as people. And it's what the help, the app essentially brings.
So in the App Store, search for The Daily Shifts. That's the actual name. You'll see it. It's got a little arrow, little gradient green. And so hopefully, I'm excited to see. And if you download the app and you have an amazing experience, I'd love to hear from you. You can DM me at my Instagram.
We'll put all your information on the show notes as well on the website, the Jimmy Rex Show. So, dude, appreciate it, man. It's fun to be a part of this journey with you, and I'm sure we'll want to do a follow up another time. So
we'll be shifting soon.
Sounds awesome, my friend.
Jimmy.
Thanks, Doug.